Boomerang is brought to you by Books and the rest of your friends at the public library.
Hey, what's up with Nicole? Why is she hanging upside down in the closet by her legs?
She's doing that for her story on bats to see what it's like. Now she's getting used to it.
Wow. If she's that much of a goner, I'll take her over to my backyard to get rid of some mosquitoes.
Do you have a mystery for us, Tucker?
Well, it's no mystery anymore, but I'll tell you the story. Someone was messing with the arm's accuracy on her paper route, and I popped the case cold.
Where are you going, Josie?
I'm going back to 1851 to speak with the conductor on the Underground Railroad.
Whoa, that was close.
No, not that kind of railroad.
Well, let's see. Toby sends us a postcard from Washington, D.C. We've got a big idea about handguns. Steam and Eamon has another boom radio program, and we learned to count to 10 in Greek, because you just never know. So let's get a hold of that boomerang and give it a twirl.
This is Josie Marin, and I'm one of the Boomerang kids who's going to help you keep up with what's up. We've got stories, songs, kids' views of the news, and some of the silliest, stupidest jokes you're ever going to hear.
So put on those earphones, stretch out on that freshly mown grass, and feed your head.
Now on sale, just $19.99. For a limited time only, just $19.95. Prices. They can be so darn confusing. One day you walk into a store and a pair of shorts is $10.95. The next week the same shorts are $4. Why does a new baseball mitt cost $30 and a candy bar 25 cents? And why don't you ever see anything on sale for $1.11? Our friend Freddie has his eyes on a new pair of sneakers. Freddie figured the new 75 cents R&B was the answer. He imagined himself leaping up through basketball rims in no time at all. But when it came time to count his money, it was another story.
255, 265. I don't get it. I raised my prices and now I'm making less money than I did before. Josie, have you been filching some of my money?
Right, Fred.
Well, something's wrong. My prices went up and my profits went down.
How many sandwiches did you sell with your new prices?
5.
How many sandwiches did you sell with your old prices of 50 cents?
16.
It's simple, Freddie boy. Your prices are too high. Nobody wants to buy R&Bs for 75 cents.
Yeah, but I have to buy new snakes, Josie. I guess I'll have to bump the prices up $1.
No, Freddie, you should lower prices, not raise them.
Okay, Bueno. How am I going to make more money by lowering my prices?
Okay, don't listen to me.
But Freddie did listen to his sister. And how? Next week, the sandwiches were selling for 30 cents, and they were more popular than hot chocolate on a cold day. But that didn't necessarily mean Freddie was pumping up his new tennies yet.
$3.94. Not a bad take for one day.
Forgetting something, aren't you, Fred?
Like what?
Like $1 for the extra loaf of bread you needed to buy? You still owe Harold down at the store.
Aw, man.
So Freddie's take wasn't so awesome after all. Sure, he sold a lot of sandwiches, but he sold them so cheaply that they almost cost more to make. So rhubarb and banana sandwiches are back up at 50 cents again. You see, prices are a seesaw game called supply and demand. Next issue, we'll tell you how they teeter-totter back and forth to set the price of those expensive new sneaks still sitting in the shoe store. This is Elena Wurlitzer.
You may be off school, boomers, but grown-ups never take time off from the silly stuff they do. Here are some letters from our listeners.
This is a letter from Jason Arnold in Boston, Massachusetts. Dear Boomerang, sometimes on weekends, my dad gets a silly look in his eyes and announces it is Opera Sunday. The rest of the day, instead of talking, he sings everything. It's like, Jeffrey, take out the garbage. Honey, where'd I put my wallet? What do you do with a guy like that?
Well, Samantha, you might try Rock and Roll Saturday next week. Here's a letter from Samuel Jolson from Tallahassee, Florida.
Dear Boomerang, my mom eats breakfast on the morning paper and slobbers on the comics. By the time I get a chance to look at the paper, there are cornflakes all over Calvin.
Consider yourself a lucky boy, Samuel. She could have dripped oatmeal all over Hobbs. Here's a letter from Nancy Jenner in Portland, Oregon.
Dear Boomerang, our family lives in Portland, and my mom and dad watch all the Trailblazer basketball games. When the Trailblazers lose, my parents get all grumpy and sad. Even my imitation of Bugs Bunny doesn't work. How can I cheer them up? Do you have any ideas?
Come on, Nancy. How do you expect grown-ups to get over a basketball game with a Bugs Bunny imitation? At the very least, you need to do Arnold Schwarzenegger diving into a bowl of Jell-O.
That's it for Big Talk. Send us your letters about the funny things grown-ups do, and maybe you'll hear your letter in the next issue of Boomerang.
Everyone has owned an animal at one time or another, a dog or cat or turtle. You feed them and take care of them. Well, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, plantation owners in the southern states owned horses and oxen, and even people. That's right. It was called slavery, and oftentimes the horses were treated better. Historians say maybe 50 million Africans were kidnapped from their home continent and brought to America to be sold to farmers needing cheap help with their crops. Slavery at this time was widely accepted. In fact, over half the country consisted of slave states and territories. But there were people who hated slavery, brave people who risked their lives to help slaves escape to freedom. It's 1851, and I'm sitting under a grove of peach trees outside Cambridge, Maryland, with Harriet Tubman, a conductor on the Freedom Trail known as the Underground Railroad. Miss Tubman?
Shush, girl. Those dogs aren't barking because they're happy to see us.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I didn't mean to snap your tongue off, but I've had the lash set on me more than once, and I'm gonna make doggone sure it doesn't happen again. Come on over here out of the moonlight.
Harriet, I don't see any tracks or trail. Where's this railroad?
You're sitting on the railroad, Josie, and you're talking to the conductor. Only this railroad isn't underground. This road is made up of thickets and briars and vines and hemlock and lily root. And the rails ain't what you're used to, neither. People are the rails. Good people stretched out all the way from the deep south to Canada. People willing to risk everything they had to help a bunch of strangers who got nothing.
Harriet, but you already escaped. Why are you back here?
I've been back here more times than I got fingers, Josie. The first time I came back to get my brothers. The next time a cousin. And then I went and got good at it. What I do is first I sneak my way up to the slave cabins and sees how many wants to go. 3, 4, 5, I've had 20 at a time. We travel by night, stopping at stations on the Underground Railroad for food and a place to sleep. But it's a dangerous business. I've had to turn my gun on the very slaves I'm helping 'cause they get scared and want to turn back. They go back, then they get to talking, and before you know it, the slave hunters are on to us. No, ma'am, that's not going to happen on my railroad. On my railroad, I never run off the track, and I never lose a passenger. Mercy! Even in the dark, I can see I was moving too fast for yous. Look, girl, ain't an animal on this earth that likes being penned up. Not one that knows any better, that is. Now, I hear talk how slaves living with a good master ain't got it half bad. You got food and a roof over the head. Why, some masters will treat you almost human. And if you work hard from sunup to sundown, just maybe they won't sell your sister or son or husband 100 miles down south. That is, unless the crop don't come in and the master needs the money. Master Brodos is better than most. He's got my own mom and papa so tired that they don't see no reason for moving on. But me, I've had a taste of being free. Now I have these dreams at night, following the North Star to freedom. My own husband, John Tubman, he didn't want to hear nothing about no dreams. He said running was too risky, that this life wasn't any worse than that up north. But John Tubman, well, a master had freed his parents when he died, making John a free colored man. A free colored man that don't remember the days of not being free. And when I ran away the second time at the age of 29, I didn't even tell him I was leaving because I was afraid he would turn me in. I'm still not free. Not legal type free. Of course, there ain't no law that really makes a human being free. It's up here in the head.
So when did you get it up there in the head? I mean that you're free.
Oh, now that's a question, girl. That's a question. I guess I was a bit 7-year-old and out on loan to Miss Susan to take care of her baby and clean the house. She and her sister, Miss Emily, lived in a house flush with carpets and fancy chairs in every corner. I had never seen nothing like it. Of course, and I didn't know too much about dusting, and she was whipping me every time I turned around for not doing a fair job. If it wasn't for her sister Emily, I'd probably be a string of welts even now. One morning I was standing there by the breakfast table, waiting to take the baby and eyeing a bowl of sugar cubes. Of course, I was never allowed any sweets nor sugar. Miss Susan got into some quarrel with her husband, and whilst they were fighting away, I finally couldn't stand it any longer, and I filched one. She turned back at me that instant and went right for her switch, and Ma just lit off out the door and never stopped running. Every time I slowed down, I got to thinking about that switch, and my legs came back to life. I happened on a giant pig pen, and I tumbled over the fence so tuckered out that I didn't stir for a day. For 4 days I stayed in the pig pen, fighting with the little piggies for scraps of potatoes. The old sow didn't much like me, and we kept our distance. Finally, I got so hungry I had to go back. But I got that taste of freedom.
After Harriet Tubman escaped to freedom, she went back into southern states more than 17 times to help fellow slaves. She became known as the New Moses. Her picture was posted on trees, and rewards up to $40,000 were offered for her capture. During the Civil War, she served in the Northern Army as a scout and a nurse. But even after escaping from slavery and playing an important role in the war between the states, Harriet Tubman could not escape prejudice. After the war, on the train ride back to New York, she was forced to ride in a freight car because of the color of her skin. The Emancipation Proclamation brought an end to slavery, but only people like you and me and our friends can get rid of the stupid prejudice that hangs around America even today. This is Josie Marin with another turning point in American history.
Full power, please. I need power. Power.
Give me full power.
Let's have some power, Captain.
When my family would go on car trips, it always seemed like we would go through a tunnel somewhere or other. Now, I don't know about you, but when I go through tunnels, I hold my breath. One time, my family and my friend Maria were going through the mountains of Colorado, and we went through tons of tunnels. There we were, my sister and I, cheeks puffed up like chipmunks blowing trumpets. Maria says, "What are you guys doing?" She says she never held her breath and she never had any bad luck that she knew about. So I figured, how bad could a little bad luck be anyway? The next tunnel, I was ready. I stared straight ahead and tried to breathe normally, but I was so nervous even that wasn't easy. My sister looked at me with those huge, fat red cheeks and eyes bigger than walnuts. I didn't pay attention. I just concentrated on the tiny speck of light at the end of the tunnel. It got bigger and bigger as Maria tried to make my sister laugh. Finally, we reached the sunlight, and my sister blasted out a belly full of air and lost no time teasing me how I was going to be cursed. I got through the rest of the day without any bad luck. Well, I did drop my popsicle in the dirt, but that couldn't be from breathing through a tunnel, could it?
My name is Tucker Jones. I'm a private eye. There's 752 stories in the town I call home. This is one of them. It was a Wednesday night when I got the call. I guess that's what it was. I was sitting at my desk doing long division when I hit the floor like a dead man. Someone called out my name. I got up to look out what used to be a window, and there she stood, another rock poised to pitch. Lynn Farmer. Blue eyes, braces, and the finest curveball this side of Fox River. Great smile, too. I figured she had to brush her teeth 20 times a day to get braces to shine like that. I went downstairs to check out her story. Lynn had a paper route. Every day after school, she rode her bike through the neighborhood, working the famous curve. Nobody had to look for their paper with Lynn on the route. She could park it on a dandelion at 50 paces. Never missed. Until now. Seems that a few days ago, she started getting calls from her customers saying their paper was in the bushes or on top of the house. Someone was doing a number on her. She wanted that rat's name. I reminded Lynn that I usually specialized in the recovery of stolen art masterpieces, but that in her case, I would make an exception. The fee? Curveball lessons and a new window. She agreed. She had no choice. I went back upstairs to sweep up. The next day, Lynn met me in the alley behind her house. She was on her bike, loaded down with papers. I told her to go ahead and do the route like she always did, but today, I'd be shadowing her. She set off down the street, with me tracking her from the alley. I stuck to her like wet toilet paper on a foot. But halfway through the route, I doubled back for a quick look to see. Sure enough, there he was. The light was fading, and I couldn't make out a face. Whoever it was picking up the papers from the porches and whipping them into the bushes. I crept closer. As the rat turned to pick up the Norton's paper, he saw me and took off. I can really burn, but this guy's engine was running on fear, and that's one powerful fuel. I lost him. I went back to the Nortons, pulled out my pocket flashlight, and looked at the front steps. Muddy footprints from a sneaker, the kind that millions of kids wear. Little bits of sawdust stuck to the prints, and then something else. An odd smell. Oil. Only not like that from a car. At first I couldn't place it. Then it hit me. I'd gotten a whiff of the same smell when I met with Lynn. I got on the horn and arranged to meet her. I try not to be rude, but my snorts must have given me away. She took a couple of quick sniffs under her armpits. Then she asked me straight up, "What do you have on your nose, Tucker?" I asked her if she was wearing perfume. "Only this," she said, holding out a shiny palm. "Just oiled my glove. It's glove oil. Got to be ready for the new season." My first break. I turned heel for Jake's Sporting Goods to find out who purchased glove oil in the past 72 hours. His answer was not encouraging. Every Rocket, Giant, Brave, Spaceman, and Dodger in the town had been there the past couple of days to buy the stuff. It was Little League tryouts, and I know all about that. If you can't catch, you just oil up your glove. Now that the rat was on to me, I needed a new strategy. Tonight, I was staking out the Hansons' house. Mr. Hanson had called Lynn the day before, saying his paper had been in the tree for 3 days in a row. If she couldn't get in on his porch tonight, he was going to cancel his subscription. The pressure was on. I had a hunch about the guy. I stashed myself in the trees beside Hanson's yard and waited. The evening was clear, with no wind. I could hear the neighborhood settling down. Parents calling their kids in for supper, a dog barking, someone pounding a few more nails into something before quitting for the night. I heard the car at inner spokes before I saw her. Zipping across the grass on her bike, on full tilt, she gave the paper a heave. It skipped up the stairs and landed on the porch, 6 inches to the right of the door. Jealous? You bet I was jealous. As she rode on down the street, I waited for the rat. But tonight, she was working alone. The streets were empty. She circled back after her route was done. "No visitors tonight," I told her, and that made her angry. "Who is this guy?" she yelled. I calmed her down. "We'd talk in the morning." The smell of barbecued ribs drifted over the bushes, and I knew right away it was my dad's secret recipe. My nose wanted to follow the smell right on home, but I had one more hunch to check out. This time, I let my ears do the work. The sound of that pounding hammer reminded me of the sawdust I had seen on the Nortons' porch. Where there's hammers, there are usually saws, and I followed the rhythm of the hammer into the Nortons' backyard. There were freshly cut steps winding up the oak tree behind their house, and at the first intersection of the branches, a treehouse still under construction. As I stood at the base of the tree, my eyes dropped down to the sneaker prints in the mud. Lots of sneaker prints, all dusted off with fresh sprinkles of sawdust. It wasn't enough to hang a man, but definitely a good sign. Suddenly, the wind changed directions. The sweet smell of the barbecued ribs gave way to that foul oil smell. Tucked into a notch in the branches was a freshly oiled baseball mitt. Bingo! I knocked on the treehouse door. Tom Norton answered. His face turned white, then red, when he saw me. "So, Tommy, why have you been messing with Lynn's paper route?" That's when the whole story came out. It turns out Tommy didn't have any interest in the paper route. He and Lynn were trying out for the same spot on one of the Little League teams, starting pitcher. He figured if he could distract her, rattle her, she wouldn't throw as well. Tommy knew how much the paper route meant to her. If he could shake her confidence there, he might have a shot at out-pitching her. Lynn was pretty nice about the whole thing once I explained what happened. She even felt sorry for the rat. And get this, at tryouts the next day, she gave him some tips on his curveball, and they both made the team. A Little League manager can't carry too many curveball artists. I left tryouts early that day. I went home, oiled my glove, propped up the radio in the grass, and started throwing against the steps of my porch. I figured I can get 2 good innings in before Mom got on to me. And by then, I just might figure out that curveball all on my own. This is Tucker Jones, and hey, keep your ears open.
Okay, everybody, it's that time again.
What time is
Oh, it's time for Weird Words. Hello, everybody. Hold it down, please. Okay, I'm sure everyone knows how to play the game. I'm going to give you a word and two different definitions. Now, only one of those definitions is correct. So, once you've made your choice, just press your belly button. That is, unless you have an Audi, and then just, tweak it, to honk a little bit or something like that. Excuse me. Can we have a quieter honk, please? Much better. Thank you. Okay. Now, everyone, our first word is muzzy. M-U-Z-Z-Y. Now, tell me, kids, is muzzy, A, the way you feel when you're dazed or confused, or B, Fuzzy the Bear's middle name? Okay, Joel Olinger from Pensacola, Florida says B, Muzzy is Fuzzy the Bear's middle name. Sorry, Joel. Muzzy is A, the way you feel if you are dazed or confused. Well, hey, good try, Joel. Good try. You just must have been a little muzzy when you answered that. Isn't Fuzzy Wuzzy's middle name Carl? Excuse me, I'm sorry. Okay, word number 2 is phlox. P-H-L-O-X. Phlox. Now, tell me, kids, is phlox A, a childhood disease causing blurry eyes and nausea, or B, a plant which has a cluster of white flowers? Ann Macon from Eugene, Oregon says phlox is A, a plant with white flower clusters. Congratulations, Ann. You are correct. Yes, Ann knows that the disease causing blurry eyes and nausea is called TV. Now, word number 3, pram. P-R-A-M. Pram. Now, tell me, is a pram A, a baby carriage, or B, a jelly-like spread made from pickles and rutabagas? Well, Zippy Clausen from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania says a pram is A, a baby carriage. Congratulations, Zippy, you hit it right on the head. A pram is a baby carriage. Though sometimes I guess people do take rutabagas for walks in a pram. So finally, the weirdest word. Now, put on your weird shields for this one. Pusillanimous. P-U-S-I-L-L-A-N-I-M-O-U-S. Pusillanimous. Okay, now, for a special prize, does pusillanimous mean A, timid or scared, or B, the results of a voting organization in which everyone votes the same way except for one silly pusshead? Jim Justin from Biloxi, Mississippi says pusillanimous means A, timid or scared. Congratulations, Jim. You are correct. And for correctly guessing our weirdest word, you have won a 50-pound rattlesnake for your backyard. Yes, this rattlesnake, which answers to the name Killer, is guaranteed to keep you and your friends on their toes all summer long. Come on, Jim. Don't be pusillanimous. Come on up here and accept your prize. You've all heard of the pusillanimous lion from The Wizard of Oz, didn't you? Well, that's it for Weird Words. Until next time, this is Freddie Finkelhammer saying so long. Until next time.
You never know when you're going to have to count to 10 in Greek. I mean, let's say you're on vacation with your Aunt Millie on your Greek island, and she meets this creepy guy named Vasily with hair coming out of his nose and bad breath. Aunt Millie makes the mistake of being nice to this guy, and he thinks she's in love with him. He wants the two of you to come to live with him and his pet goat. Of course, Aunt Millie's trying to be nice and says, well, I don't know. And Vasily says,
Okay, I will break 10 plates to show my love for you. If you are still here before I break number 10, it means you are forever mine. Ένα, δύο, τρία, τέσσερα, πέντε, έξι, επτά, άκτο, εννέα, δέκα. Ένα, δύο, τρία, τέσσερα, πέντε, έξι, επτά, άκτο, εννέα, δέκα. Ένα, δύο, τρία, τέσσερα, πέντε, έξι, επτά, άκτο, εννέα, δέκα.
if you don't know how to count to 10 in Greek, you're still standing there with Aunt Millie at the kind of digda, and you're going to spend the rest of your life with a goat. But no, at the sound of octo, you grab Aunt Millie's hand, jump onto your bikes, and ride off into the olive trees. So boomers, learn how to count to 10 in Greek, because you just never know.
Bat, a nocturnal mammal having long digits and forearms which are covered by a thin membrane to form wings.
I don't know about this. I'm hanging upside down with my legs wrapped around the swing set bar. It's dark. I want to see what it feels like to be a bat. The upside down part is all right. It's the upside down part in the dark that's kind of creepy. But I'll tell you one thing for sure. It makes you look at the world differently. I've always liked bats. I think they're awesome. Of course, not too many folks share my opinion. I mean, people don't like mice. Then you take what looks like a mouse and give it a row of sharp little teeth. Then put it in the air with prehistoric pterodactyl wings, and well, cute and cuddly is not the word. But that's why I like them. They're different. In a world of mammals that walk and talk and bark and moo, these mammals can fly and click and squeak. In a world that worships sunshine, our bat friends bag it all day in creepy, dark caves with their alarm clock set for sundown. Hey, I'm not going to knock that. Sometimes when I have to go to bed and I'm not sleepy at all, I almost wish I could unfurl my wings and go hunting for mosquitoes. Well, I said almost. The funny thing is, if you ever get a chance to look at a bat up close, you'll see they have tiny arms and fingers and legs, just like us. They're all connected by a thin, fuzzy skin to make a wing. Sitting up on Haskins Hill, I used to think it was pretty nifty the way hawks swoop down out of the sky to get a tiny mouse. But I can hear a bat saying, "Oh, big deal. Hawks are nothing. I could pick a mosquito out of the air at 50 feet, and I could do it in the dark." Hey, that's pretty good, even if the dark part doesn't really make it any harder. You see, the bat doesn't see mosquitoes. It hears them, and not the buzzing sound either. 'Cause if you're a mosquito, one ear you do not buzz in is a bat's. Bats send out tiny clicking sounds too high for humans to hear. Those clicks go out and bounce off stuff, and they're picked up again by the bat's big floppy ears. That bat brain uses the information to calculate exactly where the insect is, and then zoom, it zips over for breakfast. Now that's fast food. Moths can hear the bat's sonar zooming in on them, and they'll lead bats on incredible aerial cartwheels to try to get away. Locating things by sound is called sonar, and humans have spent millions of dollars to figure it out for use on boats and submarines. I love it. Here, this tiny little mammal everyone loves to hate is born with the perfect system. Not everyone in the bat family eats insects. Some bats in Mexico and Argentina eat frogs and fish. Others eat rotten fruit from trees. Speaking of family, every family has a troublemaker, and we know who yours is, the vampire bat. They live way down in Central and South America and suck blood from cattle and other animals. Get this, they can sneak right up and tap into an animal's arteries without them even knowing. I think I'll stay with peanut butter and orange juice. I wonder, Bats, which came first, your lousy eyesight or that sonar stuff? I mean, how many trees did your great gazillion grandparents have to fly into before you started sending out those clicks? And what is it about the dark anyway? Did you start flying at night to avoid enemies like the hawk? Or because there's not much traffic whizzing around in the dark? Or are you just a romantic who likes to eat out under the stars? This is Nikki with the Natural Wonder.
You've heard of Batman. Well, we decided to call it Batboy, 15-year-old Bert Granches. Bert has been studying bats since he was 4. He's been featured on TV shows, and in 1988 he traveled all the way down to Mexico to capture 25 vampire bats for study. Bert, how'd you get so interested in bats?
I first got interested in bats when I was about 4 years old. I was looking at a book on mammals, and there's about a 20-page section on bats, and I just fell in love with them. Bats are very interesting animals. Bats aren't dirty or scary, and they don't like getting in your hair, and they don't want to bite you. Bats are just simple creatures that do a lot for the environment. When you find bats on the ground or in unusual places, like low on trees or in houses, those bats are ones that can be sick. Be very careful of them, and if you ever handle bats or any other wild animal, we need to use gloves to do that.
Bert, what kind of bats do you keep now?
Bats I have at home are 2 Egyptian flying foxes, 1 Jamaican fruit bat, 1 evening bat, and let's see, about 8 red bats. My funniest experience with a bat would have to be the time that I was on the Johnny Carson show and one went to the bathroom all over me.
Whopper, whoppoo. Hey there, boomers. Welcome to the station in your imagination. Boom Radio. This is Flame and Eamon broadcasting to you alive from a messy bedroom somewhere in the universe. Now, the reason they call me Flamin' is because it rhymes with Eamon. And the reason they call me Eamon is because that's my name. But if you really want to stretch that brain of yours, and of course you do, because that's what we do here, you can just say I'm aiming to take you ear fanatic on a trip inside your mind. Boom Radio. Now, I hate to start off the show on a whine, but let me tell you, boomers, I went out on a trip this weekend with my dad. It was late, and it was a little town. The only hotel was full, so we went to this place called a bed and breakfast. Bed and breakfast was about all this place had. They had no ice or soda machine, no packages of soap on the sink, no electric beds or paper ribbons over the toilet seat. There wasn't even a TV in the room. None of the fun stuff. Just a sign that said, "No children." Can you handle that? To think we would even want to stay there. Boom Radio. And so we end up going to the next town over and staying at my grandma's. Now, Grammy lives in an apartment building full of other Grammys and Grandpas. And it's kind of boring, but I knew they had a pool, so I was jacked. And it took me all of 13 seconds to change into my suit and head for the concrete beach. And there was a sign on the fence that said, "No children." Holy spinokers! Do grown-ups know who they're messing with? Do they have any idea how lucky they are to have kids around? Think about it. Saturday morning would be all news and soap operas. Station wagon car makers would go out of business. Ferris wheels would be torn down and replaced with more big, ugly concrete buildings. The police would dump snow cone ice out onto the street and make themselves spinach and pate. Bicycles would have seatbelts, and colored comics in the Sunday paper, kiss them goodbye. All people would get on their birthdays would be stuff like underwear and socks. Blowing bubbles would be punishable by death. Bedtime stories would be about money and war. Ice cream would taste like oysters and liver. And who would they blame for messes in the kitchen? What excuse would grown-ups use to go to the zoo? Boomers, the next time you see a sign that says "No kids allowed," you tell them they'd just better think who they're messing with. Tell them we just might go on strike. Then they'd see how lucky they are to have us. This is Flame and Eamon at the Smile on your dial. Boom Radio.
What's the big idea?
How many of you have ever watched a television show or movie where someone gets shot? Whoa. Well, I guess it would be easier to ask, is there anyone out there who hasn't? Right. Well, those victims are just TV and movie actors. They get up and walk away. But every day, there are 63 people killed in America by guns who don't get up and walk away. And you know what? 10 of those are teenagers. This is Gabe Weiss, the king of complicated stuff.
And I'm Jennifer King with the Bureau of Big Ideas. We're here to talk about guns.
Stick 'em up, kid.
Ah! Cut it out, King. You scared me.
It's just a water pistol. Where's a kid like me going to get a real gun anyway?
In your parents' closet. Maybe down in the basement. Or maybe from some sleazeball down the street. That's the hard truth, King. Kids are involved with shootings all the time.
Wow, that's sick. It used to be that parents were worried about whether we'd get grass stains on our pants or eat too many sweet tarts. Now, especially in the cities, parents are worried their kids might get killed by a stray bullet flying around. There are almost 200 million guns owned by people in the United States today.
Some of those are what they call long guns, rifles and shotguns that are used for target practicing and hunting. but a lot of them are little guns that fit into the palm of your hand. Little guns whose only purpose is to kill. In fact, there are more handguns in America than are in the rest of the world combined. And that causes problems. In 1988, handguns killed 7 people in Great Britain, 13 people in Australia, 8 people in Canada, and guess how many in the United States?
100?
Try 8,915.
Whoa. Well, I don't get it, Jennifer. Why aren't these guns illegal if all they do is kill people?
They're not illegal because there's a very powerful group of people in this country called the National Rifle Association, or NRA. The NRA is like a club, but it's also called a lobby.
You mean like a hotel lobby?
Well, kind of. They're called a lobby because they hang around in hotel lobbies, in senators and congresspeople's offices, any place they can convince them to pass the kind of laws they like. There are lobbying groups for everything from the environment to oil companies.
I guess I still don't get it, Jennifer. Why shouldn't weapons whose only purpose is to kill people be illegal except for policemen and soldiers?
Well, I asked people that question at the National Rifle Association, and they said the Constitution guarantees the right to have guns. They have the Second Amendment inscribed on the outside of their Washington, D.C. building. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Hold it there, Jennifer. I've done a little research myself, and that's not the Second Amendment. That's part of the Second Amendment. The whole thing reads like this. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, just in case that's one kind of English you don't speak, let Jennifer translate for you. A well-regulated militia,
that's an army,
being necessary to the security of a free state,
being necessary to protect a free country.
The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
People will be allowed to keep guns.
Okay, Jen, now put the whole thing together.
Since an army is necessary to protect a free country, people will be allowed to keep guns. Whoa, that is different.
See, this was written during a time when the people were the army. They didn't have the Army and Navy and Marines and Air Force and tanks and jet planes and Navy ships to protect us. And they just finished fighting the British in the New England states. So our founding fathers figured the only way we could really be safe is to have every household keep a couple of guns in their house.
Now, except for Pearl Harbor, there hasn't been an attack on America by the enemy in over 160 years. And Pearl Harbor is in Hawaii, 3,000 miles away from the mainland. And a bunch of handguns wouldn't have exactly helped us there either. So the question is, did Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson and all those other folks want to guarantee us the right to protect our country, or did they want us to have a gun in our closet to scare off burglars?
Well, another thing the NRA says is that laws aren't going to keep criminals from getting a gun. The good guys need guns to protect themselves from criminals. Jeepers, Jennifer, since criminals can get machine guns and hand grenades, should it be made legal for us to have machine guns and hand grenades too?
Besides, for every one burglar or bad guy killed by a handgun, there are 42 family members shot. And sometimes it seems to be the criminals this gun lobby is protecting, not the good guys. In one huge Chicago apartment complex, people had started sleeping in their bathtubs because it was the only place they were protected from all the bullets flying by. People were dealing drugs all over, and there were gunfights every night. So they passed a rule to make it illegal to bring in guns. Well, the NRA says it isn't right to prevent people from having guns. And they are fighting that rule. The kids of Chicago are sick and tired of gunfire in their neighborhoods, too. This year, a group of 5th and 6th graders from the Nettlehurst Elementary wrote letters to the superintendent of police. The superintendent not only read their letters, he invited the students to police headquarters to tell why they were interested in getting rid of all the guns. We called the school and talked to Ellis Nash, a 5th grader at Nettlehurst. Ellis, have you ever seen or heard a gunfight before?
I heard one last night. Just like a lot of guns being fired, like they was just firing for no reason. Police came. I don't know what happened after that. I had fell asleep.
Wow. Do you know anybody who has a gun?
Well, he's not a kid. He's around 18. And Rashawn, and somebody had took some money from him. He shot the boy in the head.
Why did your classmates write to the police about guns?
Because we don't want gangs to have them, and it's not right.
Thanks, Alice.
Well, enough of the lobbyists who are trying to keep handguns legal.
Yeah, I think we need a kids' lobby to help us stay alive.
There are a lot of organizations who are trying to make handguns illegal, too. In fact, right now, they're trying to take the first step by passing a law that makes people wait 7 days to get a gun after they buy it.
How's that going to stop all the killing?
Okay, let's say my big brother snuck into my room and tears it apart. Well, the first thing I feel like doing is to take a grapefruit and smash it in his face. Lucky for my bro, my mom won't give me the grapefruit until 7 days after I ask for it. Okay, it's 7 days later. Am I still mad? Still mad? I forgot all about it. Well, a lot of people get shot by people who are mad or on some kind of drugs. The idea behind the law is that people like this may not forget about who they want to shoot, but they may be in more sensible mind if they did have a time to cool off for a while.
That makes sense. That's because one of the men behind this law is James Brady. 10 years ago, a man pulled out a $29 gun and tried to kill President Reagan. One shot wounded the president, and another wounded his press secretary, Mr. Brady. The shooting left him paralyzed and in a wheelchair.
I don't know, Jennifer. A 7-day waiting period seems like the least we could do. Who are these crazy people shooting all these guns?
You know what, King? I'm going to find out.
Hey, where are you going with that boomerang?
To jail. If I'm not back in 10 minutes, come get me. I'm sitting here at San Quentin Prison in California with Jerome Thomas, who murdered somebody with a handgun and is now serving a life sentence in jail. Mr. Thomas, how old were you when you held your first handgun?
I was 13 years of age. A couple of friends of mine had stole it, and I paid them about, I believe, $20 for it. So as I look back, when the age of 13, by putting my hands on that first 38 special, feeling the sensation of power run through my arm and the jolt in my body, I liked it. I fell in love with it. Whenever I felt challenged by friends, peers, even family members, I would rush to my best friend, which was a 38, and I would talk to it. I would sleep with it, okay? I would look at it and ask it, what are we going to do today? Who are we going to go out and frighten today? If, in fact, you get caught up in that world, or you get caught up in that life, there's no stopping it. After the first encounter with the first shot, the first sight of, the 13, 14-inch recoil of fire, shooting out from the shotgun, singeing feeling that you feel in your fingers and you're tingling, throughout your body, will give you, that sensibility of being a powerful individual. Let's face it, a gun doesn't make you the most powerful man in the world, okay? It's easy, very easy to display violence or be violent, but it's an honor to be peaceful.
If you knew someone had a handgun in their home, would it stop you from going in there to rob them?
If you consider yourself weak, then you go out and you purchase yourself a handgun or a rifle or a shotgun, and you tell your spouse, this is for protection of the house. Okay, fine, you both agreed on it. But what about the 5-year-old kid who thinks it's a toy and picks it up and aims it and, fires it, pulls the trigger, and hits someone with it? You say, well, we put a lock on the trigger. We'll put it in a high place. Come on, let's face it. What do you need the handgun for? As far as someone having a weapon, or as far as someone having a gun in their house to protect them, no, I don't feel that is a deterrent to anyone. If they want something out of that house bad enough, they're coming in, whether you have a cannon in. I think you have to control the amount of guns that are being distributed throughout the system, throughout the United States.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Jerome Thomas now spends much of his time helping troubled kids in a special prison program. Boy, is it creepy in here. All the bars and clanging doors and people walking around in handcuffs. King, I'm out of here.
Most of us can only imagine what it's like getting shot at or losing a friend or relative. But for some people, it's the real thing.
I didn't realize I was hit by a bullet until I fell on the ground. Like, after I fell on the ground, it felt like I just had my top part, no legs and nothing. Doctor said you might not walk again. I said, Mom, stop playing, Mom. I'm gonna walk.
Down here in Little Havana, it's like, tradition to shoot off your guns on New Year's Eve. And my father has taught me how to use guns, and I've been target shooting him. I thought something like this would never happen, but, when we were using the guns on the 31st, I was shooting up, and I took a look at the gun, and all of a sudden it fires off. And my dad was walking out of the house. And, since he was the person in front of me, it hit him. There was a flight of stairs there, and, by the impact of the gun, he went off balance, and he fell down the stairs. It took a month for me to go because nobody wanted me to see him. They said he was in real bad conditions. He was on a respirator and everything. And finally when I went, it was on the day of his birthday. His 39th birthday in the hospital. And I was real scared, I was scared. And I didn't know how to think. I didn't know how he was going to react. But then, I knew he was my father. And, me and my father love each other a lot. Nothing. I knew inside that it wouldn't really, bring anything between us. But
the bullet went straight through, and it shattered 2 of my blood vessels, and the other one, it blood clotted. They had no other choice but to amputate my leg. Well, when I came out of surgery, at first I just thought it wasn't real. And then when I tried to wiggle my toes, I knew it was gone, and I just cried. I just cried loud. I hollered. I yelled. And at that time, I wish I was dead.
In The Big Idea, we try to present 2 sides to every problem. And this subject is no different. On one side, you have people who are arguing to protect their right to keep guns. On the other side are people who think it's more important to protect people's lives and their rights to a safe, peaceful world in which to grow up. What do you think, Boomers?
We'd like to close the story with a letter to the Chicago police from Angela Lorenzo, who was in 6th grade. Angela writes, "Please think and think very hard. Did guns do any good to anybody? Stopping guns is hard to do. Doing something about it, it's up to you."
That's the big idea.
Up, 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 and away. How many times have you seen little kids crying because their balloons get loose and drift into the sky? Well, they may have a good reason to cry. It's really not so bad when just one balloon gets away, though. What's scary is when people release thousands of balloons into the air at big events. What happens to those balloons? The helium leaks out, or they pop and come down to the earth, where the birds and other animals often mistake them for food. You can imagine what balloons taste like, right? But the worst part is that they get stuck in the animals' throats. There's another danger with those silver metal balloons. Those have been known to throw entire neighborhoods into darkness when they get caught in the electrical lines. So do the world a favor. Don't plan on releasing 50 jillion balloons at your next birthday party. And if you buy helium balloons, whatever you do, hold on. Remember, the planet doesn't belong to us. We belong to the planet.
Why did the man bring the ladder to the game?
Because the Giants were playing.
I've got some good news and some bad news for you. Tell me the bad news first, Doctor. I'm going to have to amputate your legs. And what's the good news? The man in the bed next to you wants to buy your shoes.
little boy put suntan lotion on the chicken?
Because he liked dark meat.
Two fleas were running across the top of a packet of soap powder. "Why are we running so fast?" gasped one. "Because it says, 'Tear along the dotted line.'"
What did one math book say to the other? Gee, I got a lot of problems. Three men jumped off the George Washington Bridge, and one didn't get his hair wet. How come?
He was bald! Ha ha ha! What did one candle say to another? Are you going out tonight?
Once every 10 years, our government sends a questionnaire to every person in the country to find out stuff about the American people. They ask questions like, do you own a car? How much money do you make? Do you have any pets? To tell you the truth, those kinds of questions don't really tell us what we want to know about all of you listeners out there. So this year, we will be conducting our very own Boomerang Kids Census. We don't care about your microwave oven. We want to know important stuff, like, do you think people should be allowed to have guns?
I am John McDonald. I am 10 years old, and I live in Kyle, PA. I think hunters and the FBI and police should be allowed to have handguns, rifles. I think any civilian should not be allowed to particularly hurt people or hurt their kids, maybe by accident. I'm Matthew Carvalho. I'm 12 years old, and I live in Andover, New Hampshire. Yes, I think trustworthy people should be allowed to have guns, because I know some people like to go hunting, though I don't. But I think there should be a waiting period so that trustworthy people who might do something illegal would have their backgrounds checked.
Hi, my name's Lisa Hurrich. I'm from Honda, and I'm 9 years old. No, I don't think people should have handguns because the only meaning they're for is to kill people or to injure them.
If you want to be part of our Kids Census, write down your name and phone number, and some Saturday morning, we might give you a call. This is Jennifer King for the Boomerang Census.
History class is okay, but it's all just words and dates and names. If a kid could spend 2 weeks in Washington, D.C., I figure it would be good for 6.5 years worth of history class. I mean, just think about it. The president lives here, Abraham Lincoln died here, George Washington slept here, the Congress meets here, there are representatives from every country in the world who hang out here. And from the looks of this cemetery, half of the people in the world are buried here. We're in Arlington Cemetery. As far as you can see in every direction, there are gravestones, smooth white gravestones, that all look exactly alike, marking the gravestones of American soldiers who have died in wars or served in other countries in other ways. Even astronauts are buried here. But there are 2 graves that are really neat, if graves are ever neat. One is John Kennedy's grave. President Kennedy was shot and killed when our parents were kids, and there's a little flame at his grave that never goes out. I kind of like that. Another special one is the tomb of the unknown soldier, and I'll bet you'll never guess who was buried in it. That's a pretty good bet because no one knows. Well, almost no one. The words carved in the tombstone are, "Here rests in honored glory an American soldier known but to God." Yeah, it's tough to get anything by him. The unknown soldier is really 4 soldiers now. One from World War I, World War II, the Korean War, and Vietnam. They're just soldiers that nobody claimed. But there's a soldier guarding that tomb all day and all night, every day of the year. During the summer, every half hour they have this big ceremony when a new soldier comes to take his place. They march all around and click these metal taps that they have on their shoes called cheaters. Their dark blue uniforms are completely perfect. White gloves on their hands and blue braids around their shoulder, and they never smile, not even a little bit. I did see one of them blink a few times, though. For Memorial Day, people come out and place tiny American flags on every single grave at the cemetery. Everyone buried here served their country in a special way, Gramps explained. People put flags there just to show that the rest of us appreciate their sacrifice and that we haven't forgotten them. But back to my history class. Gramps and I took a train into town yesterday, and the lesson started on our taxi ride to the hotel. We could have walked faster, and there was so much traffic. But then we wouldn't have been able to talk with Nassim. Nassim was from Pakistan, and he was the driver of our taxi. Nassim says that everybody in Washington, D.C. is from somewhere else, that they put up with all this traffic and hot weather because things happen in Washington, D.C. every day that don't happen anywhere else. I was about to ask, like what? When a huge helicopter flew over our head. Nassim stuck his head out the window. "That is the only way to get to the airport," he said. "That is the president's helicopter." Ouch! I bumped my head on the glass in my rush to get a glimpse. I'm here 25 minutes and already we see the president's helicopter. The rest of the taxi ride was the same way. That's the Capitol building where all the senators and Congress people work. And over there, there's the National Archives where the Declaration of Independence is kept. The real one, I asked? The real one, he said. Oh, and over there, the Air and Space Museum, where you can see everything from hot air balloons to the Wright brothers' first airplane. Now we're passing the Museum of Natural History, where they keep dinosaur skeletons and a stuffed African elephant. Look, there's a Museum of American History, where they have the original flag that inspired Francis Scott Key to write the Star-Spangled Banner, and where they keep Dorothy's ruby slippers from The Wizard of Oz. We were going to be in Washington 3 days. That night, lying in bed, I started to make a list in my head of everything I wanted to see. The only things I decided on before I fell asleep was that I wanted to see the dinosaur bones more than a poor stuffed elephant, and that Dorothy's ruby slippers came way ahead of the Capitol building. The next day we went to the Washington Monument. It's in the middle of about 25 football fields worth of grass. I couldn't help thinking how much money my friend Alex and I could make mowing all these lawns. The monument looks like this humongous white pencil standing on the eraser end. It's the tallest thing in Washington, and you can see it day and night from almost anywhere in the city. I wanted to climb the stairs, all 898 of them, but the guard said we had to use the elevators because of repairs. From the look on Grandpa's face, you would have thought that the guard had told him he had just won $1 million or something. At the top of the monument, the city spreads out like a huge checkerboard. Wide streets cut across the checkerboard and run like spokes out of a wheel from important buildings like the White House and Capitol. Do any people live here? I asked Gramps. Sure, I know that sounds stupid, but I've been here for a day now, and all I've seen are statues, monuments, parks, and cemeteries. Gramps said there's a whole other side to Washington that most visitors don't see, with all kinds of people, some that have sort of been forgotten. We ended up at the Vietnam Memorial, these huge slabs of polished granite rock that come together in a V. We saw a bunch of other memorials that day, but this one was different. Instead of reaching up to the sky, the black panel seemed to cut deep into the ground. The name of every soldier who was killed or missing in action during the Vietnam War is carved into the rock. Almost 60,000 names. There was something else different about this one, too. The way people look at it. At the Washington Monument and Lincoln Memorial, people looked like they were watching a TV show. The people at the Vietnam Memorial acted like they were in church. Some people reached to touch the names of soldiers they knew. Some even traced names with paper they placed over the carved letters. All along the bottom, people had left flowers, letters, photographs, and even toys. There were men and women all over the place with tears in their eyes. When I think of Washington, D.C., I'm going to think of, well, remembering. Remembering all the people who died to keep our country free. Remembering all the presidents who worked to give us a good country. Remembering all the people who lived in Washington that everyone else seems to forget. Remembering all that grass that somebody has to mow.
That's it for this issue, Boomers. Stay tuned. Next issue, Dave Schmeeve has another story, and Jennifer and the King of Complicated Stuff tackle a really big idea, dinosaurs.
So be good to each other out there, and remember, it all comes back.